think that piece of metal gives you the right to mouth off in my lot? Huh? Walking around like you own the place, flashing that thing in my face.
I'm standing here, officer.
Don't play that calm act with me. You Navy boys come back think you untouchable? Not in my town. Not today.
Then maybe take a step back.
The moment the officer slammed the decorated Navy SEAL against the hard metal of the Jeep, the entire parking lot went silent. People froze. Phones came out. A child dropped his ice cream. Nobody expected what they were about to witness. A respected war hero was being treated like a criminal in broad daylight, and the man doing it wore a badge. But what nobody knew was this. This single moment would destroy that officer's life forever and send him to prison for 15 years. Before we go further, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments. And if you believe in justice and real stories that matter, take a second to subscribe. It helps the channel grow and keeps these stories coming. Now let's get into what really happened. Commander Elias Grant was not an ordinary man. For over 20 years, he had served in the most dangerous places on Earth. He was part of an elite group that operated in silence, in darkness, and under pressure most people could never understand. He had led missions that saved lives and stopped threats before they ever reached home. The medal on his chest was not decoration. It was proof of sacrifice. That morning, Elias was not thinking about war. He was simply running an errand. He had parked his military Jeep at the edge of the mall parking lot, away from the busy entrance. He liked quiet. He liked space. His uniform was clean, pressed, and sharp. Every line was perfect. Every badge was in place. People noticed him, but not in a loud way. Some gave him a nod. Others whispered. A few smiled with respect. He acknowledged none of it. He stood still, calm as always. Then everything changed. A police siren cut through the air. The cruiser came fast and stopped at an angle, blocking his Jeep. The door opened before the engine even went quiet. Officer Caleb Rollins stepped out with tension already written across his face. His eyes locked onto Elias like he had already made up his mind. He didn't greet him. He didn't ask a question. He walked straight up, stopping just inches away. "You think that uniform makes you special?" Rollins said, his voice low but sharp. Elias kept his posture straight. "I'm standing here, officer." Rollins let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Don't play calm with me. I've seen your type. You come back from wherever, acting like you own the place." Elias did not react. He had been trained for situations far worse than this. He had faced enemies with weapons. This was different. This was someone who was supposed to protect. "Why did you stop me?" Elias asked. Rollins ignored the question. His eyes moved over the uniform again, slower this time, like he was looking for something wrong. "Let's see some real ID," Rollins said. "Because right now, this looks fake." The words hung in the air. Fake. Elias could have ended it right there. One move, one card, one call. But he didn't. Instead, he stayed still, watching, measuring. "I am in full uniform," Elias said calmly. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" Rollins stepped closer, invading his space. "I asked for ID. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Around them, people began to gather. Not close, but enough to see. Enough to feel something was wrong. Elias kept his hands visible, relaxed at his sides. "I haven't broken any law," he said. That was the moment something snapped inside Rollins. His hand shot out and grabbed Elias by the arm. "Turn around," Rollins barked. Elias did not move. "Turn. Around." The grip tightened. For a split second, everything paused. Elias felt the pressure, the force, the disrespect. But he did not resist. He had control. Always control. Then it happened. Rollins shoved him hard against the Jeep. The sound echoed. Gasps came from the crowd. A woman whispered, "That's a soldier." But Rollins didn't care. "You think you can walk around fooling people?" Rollins shouted, "You think this badge means nothing?" Elias's face remained calm, but his eyes had changed. Not angry, not scared, just focused. "Step back," Elias said quietly. Rollins leaned closer. "Or what?" There was no answer. Instead, Rollins began searching him. Rough, fast, no reason, no permission. He pulled at his pockets, checked his belt, pushed him again against the vehicle. Everything he did was wrong, and everyone was watching. One man started recording, then another, then 5 more. Phones were up everywhere now. Rollins didn't notice. He was too deep in it. He moved to the Jeep, yanked the door open, and started throwing things out. Papers, a bag, personal items hit the ground. "Look at this," he said loudly, trying real hard to play the part. Elias said nothing. But his silence was not weakness. It was patience. Because something else was happening that Rollins could not see. At the front of the Jeep, hidden in plain sight, a small camera blinked, recording everything. Every word, every move. And Elias knew it. He had seen situations like this before. Not here, not like this, but he understood one thing clearly. Truth is strongest when it is seen. Rollins came back, breathing heavier now. "You're coming with me," he said, reaching for his cuffs. That was the line. Elias slowly turned his head and looked directly at him. "Officer," he said, calm and firm, "this is your last chance to stop." Rollins froze for a second. Then he smirked. "Or what?" Elias didn't answer. Because right then, something new entered the scene. Engines. Not one. Not two. 4 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot at speed. They moved with purpose. Clean, precise, controlled. They stopped in a line. Doors opened. Men stepped out. Tall, focused, silent. This was not random. This was not normal. The crowd felt it instantly. Even Rollins felt it. He turned, confused for the first time. "Who the hell are they?" he muttered. Elias finally moved. Slowly, he reached into his uniform pocket. Rollins tensed again. "Don't you?" Elias pulled out a leather case, opened it, and held it up. The world seemed to stop. Rollins looked, and everything changed. His face lost color. His eyes widened. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Because in that moment, he realized something that hit harder than anything else. He hadn't just touched the wrong man. He had just made the worst mistake of his life. And there was no way out. The moment Officer Caleb Rollins saw the identification, his entire body locked up. The confidence that had filled his voice just seconds ago disappeared. His shoulders dropped. His grip loosened. The same man who had been shouting now looked like he could barely breathe. Because the badge in front of him was not ordinary. It carried weight, authority, and power far beyond anything he had ever dealt with. Commander Elias Grant did not raise his voice. He did not step forward. He simply held the ID steady, giving Rollins enough time to read every word clearly. Rollins swallowed hard. I didn't know," he said, his voice shaking. Elias closed the case slowly. "That's the problem," he replied. Behind them, the men from the SUVs had already spread out. They were not aggressive, but their presence filled the space. Every movement was controlled. Every step was deliberate. These were not regular soldiers. Their posture alone told the story. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a calm face, stepped forward. He stopped a few feet away and gave a sharp salute. "Commander Grant," he said. "We are ready, sir." The words hit the air like a hammer. "Commander." The crowd reacted immediately. Murmurs spread. People looked at each other, confused, shocked. Some took a step back. Others leaned in closer, trying to understand. Rollins looked around, panic building in his eyes. The situation had flipped, and he knew it. "I was just doing my job," Rollins said quickly, trying to regain control. "There was suspicion. I had to verify." Elias turned his head slightly, looking at him again. "By assaulting me?" he asked. Rollins shook his head fast. "No, that's not what I meant. It was just procedure." "Procedure doesn't look like this," Elias said. There was no anger in his tone. That made it worse. Rollins tried to speak again, but nothing came out. The man who had saluted stepped closer, his eyes now fixed on Rollins. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. Rollins hesitated. "No, no problem." But everyone could see the truth. The items scattered on the ground. The damaged uniform. The crowd recording everything. There was a problem. Elias glanced at the ground, then back at Rollins. "You searched my vehicle without cause," he said. "You used force without reason. You ignored every rule you were trained to follow." Rollins shook his head again. "Sir, I thought." "That's enough," Elias said. Silence fell again. For the first time, Rollins had nothing left to say. The man from the team turned slightly and gave a small signal. Two others stepped forward, not touching Rollins, but standing close enough to make it clear. This situation was no longer his to control. Elias bent down and picked up his phone from the dirt. He brushed it off calmly, checked the screen, and placed it back in his pocket. Then he looked directly at Rollins. "You still have time to be honest," Elias said. "Why did you stop me?" Rollins hesitated. His eyes moved quickly, searching for something, anything to say. "I told you. It looked suspicious," he repeated. Elias held his gaze. "No," he said quietly. "That's not the reason." The words cut deeper than any shout. Rollins's face tightened. He knew he was being seen clearly now. Not just by Elias, but by everyone around them. And by the cameras. One of the men from the team stepped closer to Elias and spoke softly. "Sir, everything is being recorded." Elias gave a small nod. "I know." Rollins heard that. His eyes widened again. "Recorded?" he said under his breath. Elias didn't answer him directly. Instead, he looked at the front of the Jeep for a brief second, then back at Rollins. That was enough. Rollins followed the glance. He saw it. The small camera. The blinking light. His heart dropped. Everything he had done, captured. Every word. Every push. Every insult. There was no denying it. "No," Rollins whispered. But it was real. And it wasn't just one camera. Around them, phones were still raised. People were still filming. Some had moved closer now, trying to get a better angle. A man in the crowd spoke up. "I got the whole thing," he said. Another voice followed. "Me too." Rollins looked around, panic now fully visible. "You can't use that," he said quickly. "You don't understand." Elias stepped forward slightly. "They understand enough," he said. Rollins took a step back. For the first time, he looked small. The man who had started the situation was now trying to escape it. But there was nowhere to go. Sirens sounded again in the distance. More units. But this time, it wasn't for Elias. Two additional police vehicles arrived and stopped nearby. Officers stepped out, slower, more careful. They had already heard something over the radio. They could feel the tension before they even reached the scene. One of them, an older officer, approached carefully. He looked at Rollins, then at Elias, then at the group of men standing around. "What's going on here?" he asked. No one answered immediately. Then Elias spoke. "Ask him," he said, nodding toward Rollins. All eyes turned. Rollins opened his mouth, but the words didn't come. The older officer's expression changed. He had seen this before. Not like this, but enough to recognize it. "Rollins," he said firmly, "talk." Rollins shook his head slightly. "It's a misunderstanding." The older officer looked at the scattered items, the crowd, the phones, the calm but controlled presence of Elias and his team. "This doesn't look like a misunderstanding," he said. Another officer moved closer and spoke quietly to him, pointing at the camera on the Jeep. The older officer nodded slowly. Then he looked back at Rollins. "You need to step aside," he said. Rollins froze. "Now," the officer added. Rollins hesitated. Then, slowly, he stepped back. The shift was complete. Control had changed hands. Elias straightened his uniform slightly, adjusting it with care. Even after everything, he carried himself with discipline. The man from his team stepped beside him again. "Sir, we can leave whenever you're ready." Elias looked around once more. At the crowd. At the officers. At Rollins. Then he shook his head. "No," he said. "We're not leaving yet." Those words landed heavy. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. In fact, this was just the beginning. What happened next would not stay in that parking lot. It would move into offices, into investigations, into courtrooms. And it would follow Rollins everywhere. Because the truth was now out. Clear. Recorded. Unavoidable. And it was about to change everything. The story did not end in that parking lot. In fact, that moment was only the beginning of a chain of events that would tear Officer Caleb Rollins' life apart piece by piece. What he thought was a simple stop had now turned into something far bigger than he could control. And the system he once believed would protect him was already turning against him. Within hours, the footage spread. It started with a few people uploading clips from their phones. Then someone shared the full video. Then the camera from the Jeep was released. Every angle showed the same thing. An officer abusing his power, ignoring the law, and targeting a man who had done nothing wrong. By the end of the day, the video was everywhere. People were talking. Angry. Confused. Demanding answers. The police department could not ignore it. They released a short statement, saying they were reviewing the situation, but that wasn't enough. The pressure kept growing. By the next morning, Rollins was suspended. By the end of the week, he was fired. But that was only the start. Because this was no longer just a department issue. This had become a federal case. Agents arrived quietly. They didn't make noise. They didn't speak to the media. But they started collecting everything. The body camera footage. The Jeep recordings. The videos from the crowd. Every second was analyzed. And what they found was worse than anyone expected. This was not a mistake. This was a pattern. Rollins had done this before. Complaints that had been ignored suddenly came back into the light. Old reports were reopened. People who had stayed silent were now willing to speak. One man said Rollins had stopped him for no reason and searched his car. Another said he was threatened when he tried to question the officer. A third said he was pushed against a wall and told to stay quiet if he knew what was good for him. For years, nothing had happened. But now, everything was coming out. Because this time, there was proof. Clear. Undeniable. And it was too big to hide. Commander Elias Grant did not go on television. He did not give long interviews. He stayed quiet, letting the truth speak for itself. But behind the scenes, he was fully involved. Not for revenge. For accountability. He met with investigators. He provided everything they needed. He answered every question with the same calm focus he had shown in the parking lot. He wasn't trying to destroy a man. He was trying to stop a pattern. Months passed. The case grew stronger. Charges were filed. Not just for the incident at the mall, but for multiple violations. Abuse of authority, illegal search, assault, civil rights violations. Rollins was arrested. This time, there were no loud words. No control, no badge. Just silence. As the cuffs went on his wrists, the reality finally hit him. The same position he had forced on others was now his own. The trial came later. And when it did, the courtroom was full. Reporters. Citizens. Officers. People who wanted to see what would happen next. Rollins sat at the defense table, no longer in uniform. No confidence. No authority. Just a man facing the consequences of his actions. The evidence was shown. The videos played. Again and again. Every push. Every word. Every moment of disrespect. The courtroom was silent each time. There was no way to explain it away. No way to twist it. It was clear. When Elias took the stand, he spoke simply. I followed the law, he said. I gave him chances to do the same. That was all. No anger. No emotion. Just truth. Then others spoke. The past victims. The investigators. Each piece added weight. Each word made the outcome clearer. Rollins's defense tried to argue that he felt threatened, that he made a quick decision under pressure. But the footage said otherwise. The jury saw it. They understood it. And when the time came, the decision was not difficult. Guilty. On multiple counts. The courtroom reacted quietly, but the impact was heavy. Rollins closed his eyes. For a moment, he didn't move. Because he knew what was coming next. The sentencing. Days later, the courtroom filled again. This time, there was no debate. The judge looked directly at Rollins before speaking. You were given authority to protect, he said. Instead, you used it to harm. You ignored the law you swore to uphold. Each word landed with weight. This court will not accept that. Then came the sentence. 15 years. Federal prison. The number hung in the air. 15 years. For one moment of abuse. For years of hidden actions. For choices he made again and again. Rollins stood still as the officers moved toward him. The cuffs went on. And just like that, it was over. His career. His reputation. His freedom. All gone. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. People wanted to hear from Elias. When he stepped forward, the noise faded. He looked the same as always. Calm. Controlled. Focused. He spoke clearly. This was never about me, he said. This was about what is right. He paused, then continued. No one is above the law. Not a civilian. Not an officer. No one. There was no celebration in his voice. Only truth. Then he did something no one expected. He announced that the money from the settlement would not go to him. Every dollar would be used to support programs that educate officers and protect citizens' rights. The crowd reacted with surprise. But Elias didn't stay. He stepped away from the cameras and walked on. The same way he had stood in that parking lot. Calm. Steady. Unshaken. Because for him, this was not about winning. It was about doing what was right. And making sure it never happens again. The story spread far beyond that city. It became a lesson. A warning. A reminder. That power without control leads to consequences. And that truth, no matter how long it takes, will always come forward. In the end, One man lost everything because he chose abuse over duty. And another stood firm, not with anger, but with integrity. That is what made the difference. That is why justice was served.